Runners, how do you feel about this statement? Cross-training for the majority of your training will not help you run your fastest marathon. Now, before you punch a hole in your screen, let me break that down. I didn't say you can't cross-train your way to run a marathon and finish it at a moderately fast pace compared to your best time. I also didn't say you can't cross-train your way to run your first marathon and finish it. I've said that first statement before, the intro one that hopefully got you triggered, and got the response from a lot of runners like, no, you're wrong. I ran my fastest marathon when I also mixed in cross-training, rah, 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 blah, blah, blah. Don't worry. I'll tell those runners why they are wrong with science and my own experience in this episode, and I'll answer questions like how to use cross-training as a tool and not just a nice to have. I've gone down the rabbit hole and now I think cross-training is amazing. What I define as cross-training for runners, examples how I use cross-training as a tool and how you can too, when's the best time to do it during your running calendar year, I map it all out for you, what cross-training activities are most and least specific to running, the law of specificity in running, and much more. But before we get into it, I'm Darren, certified running and nutrition coach, sub 3-hour marathoner, 10-hour Ironman finisher, and since 1996, yes, 96, I've been helping other self-coach runners, researching and experimenting on myself on how to get 1% better each day. Unlike other running brands, we do not do quick fixes. Instead, the 1% better runner, that's this whole community that I built up, transforms you through small step-by-step daily habit improvements, all to help you live doper in your run life. Let's get into it.
What is cross-training?
I remember back in the 90s, I was obsessed with wearing Reebok cross trainers. It was like the ultimate shoe. I could run, hike, go to the gym, and ride my bike. I don't know. That's what cross training always meant to me, but what exactly is the definition of cross training? My definition, which may differ from others, cross training for running is different than general cross training. And if you do F45, it's different than if you cross train as a triathlete. We need to have an objective with what cross training is different from. What are we optimizing for? It gives us our North Star to follow. Everything else is just noise. I define cross-training for running as any activity that isn't running that does the following. Helps aid with recovery from your run so you can get back to running as optimal as you need to. Is your goal to run your fastest, farthest, or just maintain fitness for the rest of your life? And another definition is any vigorous physical activity that helps avoid overusing the usual running muscles, tendons, and ligaments, but still maintains or builds your aerobic base by getting your heart rate up to a minimum of 60% of your maximum heart rate or high zone 1, low zone 2 effort. That was a lot, but I promise you there's a lot of goodness in there. And another definition is any physical activity that allows you to have a mental break from the primary activity of running. Those are my definitions that we'll go by for the rest of this episode. I said physical activity because, well, mental activities like meditating could then be cross-training. And yeah, everything is up for grabs.
Why should runners cross-train?
Cross-training offers runners several benefits. Minimizes injury risk by diversifying movement patterns, enhances overall fitness, including cardiovascular and muscular endurance, develops complementary strength, potentially improving running efficiency, potentially, provides a refreshing change of pace both mentally and physically, and enables maintenance of fitness during injury recovery periods. While our cardiovascular system can improve very quickly with a lot of stress, our musculoskeletal system, aka bones, tendons, ligaments, connective tissue, etc., takes 2 to 3 times longer to adapt. You also don't find out you have musculoskeletal issues until sometime weeks, if not months after you did the damage. This is why cyclists and swimmers can usually do exponentially more volume than runners as well as time goes and not get injured. To put it bluntly, running is hard on the body and you need to remember that. Cross-training isn't just some buzzword term coaches throw around to sound smart. It's the glue that turns you into a badass running machine. It builds you up, makes you stronger, and plugs those annoying weak spots that love to turn into injuries. And here's the thing, most running injuries happen because us runners are stubborn and overdo it, but a bunch of sports scientists figured it out that we can actually prevent most of these injuries or at least stop them from coming back. If you want to see the studies, there's a link in the video description or show notes below. With that said, every cross-training activity has pros and cons that come with it in relation to you becoming the best runner you can. Pilates, for instance, is excellent for core strength and flexibility, but may not be as effective as a structured gym strength workout for developing muscular endurance specific to running. I'll discuss all the different types of cross-training and how similar or not they are to running shortly. But let's talk about the runner who cross-training is great for next.
What kind of runner can benefit from cross-training?
Newbies just starting their running journey, runners bouncing back from injuries, the go far over fast runners that constantly put in the mega miles and kilometers. For the beginner runners, cross-training is actually your new best friend. or you should highly consider it to be if you haven't already and you just started running. It will definitely boost your endurance without beating up your body. Think about it, your joints aren't used to all the pounding from running yet, so getting in the cardiovascular fitness, lungs, heart, blood, mitochondria will pay dividends as your body takes the time to adapt to running. Think of it another way, as an analogy. You have a big V8, V10, V12, and W12 engine, right? And you put it into a stock Camry or Corolla, right? Just some stock base model Corolla. You put in this race car F1 engine in there. You don't even update the transmission. You shift the gearbox and the whole gearbox blows up because all that power from that engine went into it because you didn't update the transmission. This is getting a bit car nerdy. You will probably take a turn and the drivetrain will blow out because it can't handle the power. You get it. So the drivetrain, transmission, all that are your bones, ligaments, Achilles. When I sprint without getting myself ready and increasing it slowly or running too much, my Achilles is like, no, my Achilles is the transmission. My Achilles is the drivetrain. Injured runners are in the same boat as beginner runners, but they have more of a mental problem. They know their bodies can go far, fast, or both, so they don't have the discipline to start out slow. If they normally did 45 minutes to 1 hour runs 4 to 5 times a week, they would start off at 30 to 45 minute runs 3 to 4 times a week. From doing 0 running during the injury to even 20 minutes every other day is way too much stress on your body way too soon. Cross training can scratch the itch of that obsessive, I want to go out and train really long problem. And a note to high mileage runners. If you chat with any runner who's been crushing it injury free for a while, they'll probably brag about their cross training routine, or they'll brag about their genetics, allowing them to run 100-mile weeks, 100 kilometers, whatever you want, 150 kilometers without cross strength training. I know some of those people and they're weirdos, but they are outliers. Please do not try that at home. Cross training, it's a secret weapon. While we're here, is strength training a form of cross training? Technically, strength training is the ultimate form of cross training, according to experts and research. I personally do not agree with that. I slightly don't agree. I won't say I do not agree. I slightly don't agree, because you should always be strength training. It should just be a part of your running. You run, you strength train. Strength training shouldn't be an extra just in case sometimes when you feel like it. It should be done as habitually as how you put on your shoes and upload your runs to Strava. If you want to run far and or fast for as long into your life as possible, extend out the years, 10, 20, 30 years from now, there's no way around this. Strength training falls under resistance training and its close cousin to HIIT, high intensity interval training, or functional training, plyometrics. By all means, please supplement your runs with all those other types of resistance workouts I just talked about, but don't act like strength training is when I get enough time. It's part of your workouts, your running workouts, which leads to my next burning question you may have. How do you know you're doing cross training right?
How to do cross training right.
The best cross training I found from my research and experience is when you have a structured training plan. Not to sound like a broken record, but if your main goal is to just maintain fitness, enjoy running, and feel good as you age, any mixture of cross training and running will get you to that goal. Since you're here though, listening, watching, reading, I'll assume you're a committed runner, so try to let running make up at least 50% of your physical activities. Alternatively, if you're running your best time, or as far as possible is the primary objective, which most of you are, you need to take into consideration your experience, how many days a week you can devote to being physically active, how long you can train per day, and a few other variables. Here's a few examples to help it all make sense and cement it into your brain. Example for me, I split my running calendar year into 2 parts, in season and off season. To an outsider that doesn't really train like us runners do, both would look kind of the same. But you're not an outsider. You are a 1% better runner who cares about all of the details. So let's zoom in. In season, cross training is supplemental, second priority. I run 6 to 7 days a week, most weeks, 6 months out of the year. I'm either trying to run my fastest or maintain my fastest. Right now, 200 meter, 400 meter sprint, 5K, race, or half marathon. That means that during the season, I cross train much less. I don't count resistance or strength training as cross training because I'm lifting for power and to almost failure with good form, and I have an episode on that if you want to check that out. Hopefully I'll link that. I also try to get this done as quickly as possible to not accumulate too much fatigue during the season. This is supplemental work that I do in addition to my runs, not as a substitution, the exception. If I'm really trying to milk a recovery week after a hard few weeks before a race, but want to just get out and do something, I'll do a short 10 to 15 minute HIIT set with kettlebells and lighter weight followed by gentle stretching. During the main race season, I drop the bike and the swim because it's autumn/winter here in Sydney, Australia. It's a bit opposite for you Northern Hemisphere people. And that works out perfectly for me because if I lived in the Northern Hemisphere, I would struggle to resist the urge to ride and swim on those awesome hot summer days. And I wouldn't be doing specific work to running, the law of specificity, which I'll get into in a second.
How does the off-season cross-training work?
Cross-training is balanced against running. In the off-season, I have fun with cross-training and turn into the ADHD triathlete I once was years ago, the 10-hour Ironman finisher. I'll still maintain structure to keep sanity and routine and run 2 to 3 days per week, with one of those being a fast run that's either a long run, a tempo/threshold run, interval/VO2 max, or a sprint workout. Still trying to figure out the sprint stuff. I'll ride my bike 1 to 2 days a week and swim 1 to 2 days a week, weather dependent. On days when my life and the atmosphere don't line up, I'll do a HIIT workout or some type of hiking, rucking with a backpack in the woods, go with some elevation, soft terrain. During the off season, I try not to be too compulsive about, I got to do this on this day, and let things flow for a change. Rigidity for 12 months, 365 days a year can be draining. I'm very strict for 6 to 7 months out of the year during the race running season. But most of you either don't live in Australia or run 6 to 7 days per week. So how would the in-season/off-season split look for you? Enter my gift to you.
Off-season cross-train download.
Since cross-training is even more complex and specific to each person, I created something that is way more interactive and actually useful for runners. It's a free, quick, and easy cheat sheet, checklist, and 30-day 1% better training and habits plan so you can use cross-training more specifically to help your running in and out of season. See the link at the QR code right here and in the show notes or video description below to download that. And as a bonus, you'll be subscribed to our weekly newsletter that is totally different than other run newsletters. We don't do the quick fix motivational hacks. Instead, we attack your run life one step at a time with consistency, habits, and all the other tools and tactics to get you to perform better for as long as possible in your life. So go and download that and we'll get right back into the episode.
Cross-training example activities.
Something that I've always wondered was how effective was a certain cross-training activity at maintaining or even improving run fitness. So after years of being a triathlete and testing this as well as a lot of research, I've landed on what I think is the best guide to cross-training activity and run-specific benefit percentage list. The biggest takeaway from this list is that I should be incorporating more aqua jogging, or deep water running as it's called. Everyone should. And the second takeaway is around swimming. While great for overall global cardio, not very specific for running. It is not. If you're injured and have access to a pool or gym, you're better off aqua jogging, again, deep water running, and doing elliptical than swimming if you can. Here's the full short list of things you can do to cross-train specifically for running. In the column next to each activity, I've put a rough estimate of how close it is to the sport of running, aka running-specific neuromuscular activation. I'll just go over this. Aqua jogging, running is 90 to 95%. Elliptical is 80 to 90% run specific benefit. Stair climbing 75 to 85%. High intensity interval training HIIT movement dependent, so it's very dependent. I'd say 65 to 80%. Hiking, rucking is 70 to 80%. Hilly terrain with heavy weight, so putting, 20 to 30 kilos in your back, maybe 10 to 20 to start with kilos. That's about 30 to 40 pounds. You can up it as you get more comfortable and your body adapts and adjusts. Cycling, 60 to 70%. Group class aerobics like Zumba, 50 to 60%, so activity dependent. Walking fast, 50 to 60%. Functional resistance training like CrossFit, F45, 55 to 65%. Swimming, 40 to 65%. Huge range. I think if you do swim sprints, you'll maintain just like that global cardio fitness. Explosive sports like tennis, soccer, basketball, rugby, American football, if you play that, touch football, etc. Volleyball, probably 40 to 70%, depends on a few things. These percentages represent how closely each activity mimics the muscle usage, cardiovascular demand, and overall fitness gains that translate to running performance. Again, this is just a guide based on a bunch of different papers and the general run consensus, and I've put it together based on my own experience. It's near impossible to get exact numbers since everyone is different. The types of training you do is different, how your body adapts, etc. I've purposefully left out yoga and Pilates because they do not get your heart rate up to the level we need to maintain aerobic base or improve it. While I have done both yoga and Pilates poorly, only a few times, I can say with confidence that the law of specificity is applicable. If you only do Pilates and yoga and decide to run half marathon without run training, you will struggle. Whereas if you did the elliptical, aqua jogged and cycled only, and then ran, you would fare much better. This is because the activities you did were most specific to running. Do not get me wrong, it will still suck the longer and the farther the race is because you haven't ran the actual distance, but something is always better than nothing. All right, rounding it out, when cross-training for running doesn't work, aka the law of specificity. I call this also the triathlete turned runner theory. I'll be blunt with you, runners, who do whatever workout comes in their head on the day and skip intervals to go on the elliptical or ride their bike are lying to themselves. Why? Because most runners that are here want to run their best time or run as far as possible. Enter the law of specificity. You will not run your best or fastest time at your highest level by using the elliptical or ergo row machine for 80% of your workouts. You can talk about the marathon, think about the marathon, plan for the marathon. We can cheer you for the marathon, but to run your fastest marathon, you need to run close to the pace you want to do the marathon in for as long as possible in your training.
The triathlete turned runner theory.
Here's some sports science for you that I thought was very interesting, mainly because lots of cyclists and triathletes believe doing all their other sports will make them better runners. Here's some evidence to disprove that. Running fitness transfers well to cycling by improving cardiovascular fitness and providing beneficial neuromuscular adaptations, despite the difference in muscle contractions. Running involves more eccentric muscle contractions, the down movement of your stride in running. So as you come down from the stride, each leg, which don't occur as much in cycling, because your body isn't handling all that load of the body weight coming down on the bike. Running is very different. However, cycling fitness doesn't transfer as effectively to running performance due to running's higher neuromuscular demands and impact-related adaptations that aren't developed through cycling's concentric pushing off the pedal. So when you push off the pedal, that is concentric. So that would be like your back foot pushing off as you go to do your stride. But with cycling, you don't have the catching yourself when you come down. You're just pushing on the bike. And that's why I found out, again, it's a bit of a theory and some research, why cyclists that turn runners struggle, but runners that turn cyclists don't struggle as much. You still got to do the thing, law of specificity.
Final thoughts.
Before I went into research this episode, I thought of cross-training as honestly a fun, nice-to-have thing that helps you maintain fitness while you sorted out your life, injury, or deloaded from a bit of race-focused period of training. Unfortunately, runners, usually new ones, think that they can have workout ADHD and somehow can still run their best time because it worked on their first marathon. But I rarely see times dropping drastically without the running load increasing in tandem after you've run your first marathon. I can see a world where someone has perfectly optimized their cross-training routine. After years of tweaking everything, they can manage to avoid injury, push just hard enough on the run and maintain or even improve their aerobic base via run-specific cross-training methods. I'm sure that runner is older and very experienced, and hopefully that runner becomes me. I'd love to hear from you if you agreed with me, disagree, or think I was dead wrong on something. Have you cross-trained your way to consistently better running race times? Hit me in the comments below on Instagram DMs to let me know. Want to know more? You can learn more about base training and its importance at this video here. And again, if you want to really drive this home, I made a more engaging and personal free quick reference guide, checklist, and 30-day 1% better plan to use cross-training better in your running in and out of season. Check the show notes or video description below to get your free download. If you want to find out more about what we talked about in this last episode that you just listened to or watched, go to this next video right here.